So episode 1 of the Rick and Morty anime dropped earlier last week, and good God, what in the fever dream even is this show? I mean, everybody knows Rick and Morty, right? You know, ha ha ha, lay random XD, I turned myself into a freaking pickle. Funniest thing I've ever seen.
Reveal, I'm a pickle. What do you think about that? I turned myself into a pickle. I'm Pickle Rick!
Yeah, that Rick and Morty. The Rick and Morty anime, though, yeah, at least in episode 1, it's not like that Rick and Morty at all. So back in 2022, Adult Swim announced a 10-episode order for Rick and Morty, the anime, in conjunction with Telecom Animation Film, the team getting the famous writer and director Takashi Sano to do, well, I presume, the writing and the directing. Sano having worked on a number of pretty successful anime projects, anime such as Vinland Saga, banger, Baki Hanma, banger, also Tower of God. Not as much of a banger, but still pretty good. Sano also having worked with Adult Swim before, specifically on Rick and Morty, having worked as the writer and director for the number of anime-esque style short films that Rick and Morty did and released in, like, what, 2020, 2021? The short films that were also in kind of like anime style, anime fashion, where Rick and Morty go to Japan and engage in a series of like anime style plot lines. Plot lines such as like Rick being a samurai, Summer meeting a god, and the two dealing with yokai, all these sorts of like anime kind of esque shenanigans. Episode 1 of Rick and Morty the anime, though, well, it's a bit different from like those short films, and so far, I don't know if it's a good difference. So according to Wikipedia, Rick and Morty, the anime, is set between the 5th and the 6th seasons of the main series, Rick and Morty. The story of the anime revolving around the adventures of, like, alternative universe versions of the Smiths family, specifically Rick, Morty, and Summer. If you've watched Rick and Morty, which I assume you have if you're watching this video, you know that the show has like a pretty fleshed out like multiverse where like regularly Rick and Morty encounter like other Rick and Mortys from like other different multiverses, all these multiverses like crossing over, interacting with one another. So like this kind of theme and idea is like pretty on brand for a series like Rick and Morty, even though, man, does it get freaking confusing in this show, in the anime. So episode 1 of Rick and Morty the anime primarily revolves around Morty playing a like immersive VR game that Rick has constructed for him. Rick telling Summer early on in the episode that Morty will never come back from the game if he gets in too deep, and that it doesn't matter that Morty is in a video game if there are zero contradictions in said VR game, then it becomes reality to whoever is living with it. Are you following me so far? As I said, the majority of the episode following Morty as he is playing this VR game, as we see Morty from a varying different like series of realities of this VR game playing out the same scene throughout the entire episode. For example, Morty is approached by a group of thugs on the streets. Sometimes he tries to stand up to said thugs, sometimes he tries to fight them, other times he does nothing, but the result is generally, in broad strokes, always the same. A giant worm monster emerges from the ground and things go too well. In a couple of these realities, Morty dies, in another, he is saved by Rick, and in this one, he is saved by a girl named Elle, who we learn is apparently in love with Morty, and claims to be a warrior who manipulates time. Wait, a girl who manipulates time? That's the name of the episode. In another reality, Morty is saved by this guy named Frank, who in another reality we see turn away from Morty when he looked to him for help. But in this reality, he saves him. Kind of like almost taking the place of Elle in that reality, but it's Frank instead. I don't know. It gets really confusing really quickly. Throughout the episode, we see the show shift between these like ongoing different storylines in these different multiverses, all of these realities playing out like interchangeably. Honestly, it's a real clusterfuck, and it is a bit hard to kind of keep track with like what is going on and which reality they are in, but you can tell which reality, which storyline they are in, primarily based on the different color of Morty's suits. In another one, we see an elderly Morty dying from old age, dropping a strange kind of crystal ball-like object that has Morty's face in it. We then learn in that same reality that Elle gave Morty this ball to him, Elle telling him the name of this ball is the Nander Dragon's Tears. What is this, some sort of like half-baked Minecraft reference to the Ender Dragon? In another reality, we see that Frank gave him this same crystal ball, but Frank says the name of this ball is the Nander Dragon's Sweat. Gross. In one of these realities, I believe it's the reality with Elle, but I'm not sure. We see that Morty gets involved in politics and is elected a president. I think this is supposed to be a reference to like the President Morty, the evil Morty. That's a reoccurring character and is first introduced in, I believe, season 1, episode 10. But honestly, who fucking knows with this show? It's absolutely all over the place and it's insane. In another scene, which I believe is the same reality where Morty gets elected president, the reality where he meets Elle, he is at a bar with tears in his eyes as he looks at the Nander Dragon's tears, seemingly remembering Elle, who we presume that he falls in love with in said reality, and then something happens to her and he never sees her again. It seemed to be more apparent that this is the same reality where he dies of old age, as when he dies of old age, his final words are Elle's names, the name of the girl who manipulates time. Again, the name drop of the episode. Meanwhile, outside of all of this, Rick Prime is stuck in like a weird kind of like space-time warp, I guess because of what's going on in Morty's VR set. Morty like basically warping space-time as all of these multiverses and realities are like interchanging, falling on top of one another. Rick telling Summer that she needs to pull Morty out of the VR game, or like I guess things are just gonna completely go to shit. In the final scene of the episode, we see Morty have a heartfelt reunion with Elle in this really pretty park, the two going to embrace one another when suddenly the connection breaks, as Summer, we believe, has succeeded in pulling Morty out of the VR game. Again, this VR game not being a game, but actual reality to Morty, and thus it is a reality in and of itself, I guess, is the idea. And, yeah, that's it. Honestly, I have no idea how I felt about episode 1 of the Rick and Morty anime. Like, it wasn't bad, but what the fuck was it? It sure as hell definitely wasn't Rick and Morty, and while it did have like some like anime satire tropes, as well as a few jokes kind of making fun of anime as a whole, like it wasn't like insanely anime-esque, really. I guess like the absolute insanity and absurdity of the entire premise of the episode was rather anime and kind of Rick and Morty-like. I mean, a lot of pretty famous animes do love a good, like, insane, convoluted, like, time travel plotline with all sorts of, like, weird, dramatic plot twists. At the very least, this was pretty freaking weird. It wasn't bad, but, like, I don't know if it was technically good either, especially when you consider that this was like the first episode in a new season of a new kind of spin-off of a really popular show in Rick and Morty, and being the first episode of a new season of a show, it needs to have a really strong, good hook to draw the audience in, to keep them watching for the rest of the season, as these episodes are released weekly, and I wonder if it didn't do a good enough job of that. Honestly, I don't really think it did. I mean, I think I did my best to try to follow along with, like, the absurd multi-universe plot action that was happening in episode 1 of this episode on screen, and I still feel kind of lost. I have no idea, like, what this show in its totality throughout the rest of the episodes is, like, going to be about. And I feel like this show might have a drop-off in viewers for, like, the rest of the season, and I feel like you can kind of see this bear out in the IMDb reviews and ratings. This video, the currently episode 1 of this series, having a 3.1 out of 10 stars. Yikes. As well, I was kind of surprised that the episode didn't have, like, more humor. Like, I mean, it did have some humor, it did have some funny moments, a bit, but, like, they were very subtle. A lot of them being kind of, you know, making fun of, like, anime tropes that I guess only really an anime fan would really, like, I guess, get the references, or just, like, maybe the sheer absurdity of the entire concept of the multiverse plotline of the episode was, like, a joke in and of itself, but I was kind of really surprised that, like, it wasn't funnier than it ended up being. Side note, I watched episode 1 2 times, once in English and once in Japanese, and I was actually surprised at how much better, at least I felt, that the Japanese version of this episode was. Maybe that's just because like it is an anime, so I guess it would hold true, as generally almost always anime are better in Japanese than English. So I guess this holds true even for the Rick and Morty anime. So if you watch this episode once in English, I do recommend going back and watching it again in Japanese and seeing if maybe you liked it more. Yeah, episode 1 of the Rick and Morty anime, this show was real weird. Almost like fever dream weird, which is definitely, I think, what they were going for. So I guess, good job. Let me know your thoughts on episode 1 of the Rick and Morty anime in the comment section down below. I'll definitely be watching episode 2 of this show because I am genuinely curious when episode 2 drops this Friday. But I am a little tentative on like how actually good this show is going to be whenever it's all said and done. I have a feeling that a lot of people might be disappointed with it, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. If you did enjoy this video, guys, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on these videos really does help a lot in putting them into the algorithm and is the easiest way to support me. If you did like this video, then why don't you check out some of my other content, like some of the other videos on screen now. And as always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you again for watching my video. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, love, Aru.